folks, Dude here, and well, you know you're in the zombie apocalypse, and you probably should be eating. You should be eating regularly, and you probably should, well, probably cook your food, if not warm your food, because trying to warm the food internally or cook it internally, it doesn't work so good. So what do you really have? Well, you have the choice of fire, or you have the choice of these guys, which would be your classic Coleman propane stoves. There's varieties of all different burner types. I mean, this one's a 2-burner. This one's a 3-burner. Basically, it's another 2-burner. This one's obviously in the box. This one's obviously not in the box. And, well, the long and short is basically that you will have these things in which to cook upon. How do you refuel them? Well, you have containers of propane. Propane runs out. It's not a huge container. It's only a pound of propane. But when it runs out, you actually can cheat these things. If you look around the internet, there's all kinds of ways to plug this guy into a bigger can, reload it, and basically you have an adapter guy, you screw it on there, and really what burns is not the gas so much as actually the propane itself in gaseous form. So basically what happens is it takes the liquid, squirts it out, gasifies it, in other words, basically lets it evaporate, and that's what burns. So essentially you now have a situation where you basically have stuff that you can burn. You have LEDs, which don't use propane, of course. You have lanterns, which do use propane. You have mini stoves. You have obviously big burner stoves, and you can utilize other stuff that's kind of cool too, because there's adapter kits. You can hook these things to a big bulk bottle of LPG, and if you don't have that adapter, guess what? A couple of nipples, a couple of hose clamps, and you can make this thing run on the big containers that you get from the big box stores, or the Blue Rhino cans, or whatever can you basically screw into it. There's T kits here, and I'm just over here at Wally World, but you know what? There's adapter hoses, okay? A hose and adapter. Here's another hose and adapter. And all this stuff is available for you to utilize for your own purposes. Now the cool part is all this stuff is out there, and it's not hard to screw together. It's not hard to fit together. I mean, this big one here, this is 3-burner for 120 bucks. The 2-burner's 80 bucks. This one, I don't know why this one's less than this one, but this is another 2-burner for $49. This single guy here is $28. So basically what you have here is pretty much something that screws into the top of this. The canisters are $3. The 2-can setups, or the 2 packs of the 2-pounders, are basically $5.37. Before you know it, you basically have yourself a whole cook system here ready to go. The propane canisters will screw into a lot of things. This is actually a unit that uses white gas. That is something else entirely. It's also known as a dual fuel. You can also actually cheat these things. If you really are really careful, you can actually use gasoline. I would use that strictly outside. White gas is still a form of gas. It is not safe to use inside. It'll generate carbon monoxide, which will drop you. Okay, over here we have their blended fuel. Basically it's good because it works all seasons. This is your classic Coleman white gas. It is not cheap stuff, okay? You're talking 1 gallon of this stuff is $9.68. The cool thing though is, unlike gasoline, it is very purified, it is very clean, and also you can store it for long store. It's not going to gum up and basically become this really cruddy nasty stuff that turns into one big brown stain at the bottom of the can. That is good stuff to have around. The dirty little secret is it also will run on gasoline. The World War II setups were not that much similar. Well, their basic premise was very much the same, but it was not the same thing at all. They were using leaded gasoline to run in their camp stoves back in World War II. So when they say a gasoline stove, they meant it was a gasoline stove. It wasn't a white gas stove, or it wasn't a propane stove, or anything along those lines. And the easiest way to tell on that one is there's no cartridge that basically holds the fuel with what's known as a generator, or basically what happens is part of the heat becomes that which basically pre-vaporizes the fuel, then the fuel becomes a gaseous form, and that's what gets squirting up out the burners, and that's actually what works in a Coleman stove. The stove does not burn the gasoline, because that would just be a big jetting flame of, total doom, and that would not cook well. So what happens is the cartridge basically holds the fuel, it gets pressurized, and it squirts out a small amount of fuel with a metered dosage. It goes into the generator. The generator is hot, so that basically makes the gasoline, or the white gas, the Coleman gas, turn into a gaseous form that then gets squirted up through the flame burners, and that's what cooks your stuff. Now, the other thing too is it's actually a purified form of, well, I don't know actually how they do it so much. I mean, I could find references and what have you. They're not in the same, okay? You cannot dump this stuff in your car and drive around on it. It is not gasoline. It is white gas. That is something else entirely. But you know what? if you scrounge around here in the big box stores, if you scrounge around over here in Wally World, well, you know what? For $100, you pretty much can have yourself a hell of a good setup. I would say probably I would have a couple of the 1-pounders just in case, okay? The gas never goes bad, okay? Gasoline will actually crud up and get nasty and, break down and all the volatiles boil off. What happens is basically the parts that actually burn evaporate. The parts that actually are the gunk that are left behind is not burnable as much, and it basically makes a hell of a mess. Propane never goes bad. Natural gas never goes bad. Butane never goes bad. But propane and butane are not the same thing. Propane will actually work fairly good in a lower temperature. Butane will not evaporate very good at all, which is why you always see these, like the little camp cartridges for the camp stoves. They're a mix of propane and butane because one has to help the other burn in cold temperatures, because propane will burn in cold temperatures. Butane will not really evaporate. What happens is you get below a certain temperature and the stuff just stays a solid liquid. As a matter of fact, you could actually poke a hole in the thing, even on a mountaintop, and learn low pressure because you're at high atmosphere, and the butane will stay in the container with just finger pressure holding it in. I was reading a story once, a guy had that happen. He actually popped a container, thing started outgassing. He was like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. So he plugged his finger on it, and his finger was just about frozen by the time he finally found the stove and plugged it back on the way it was supposed to be. But he held the pressure of that canister in with just a fingertip because it was so cold the butane could not evaporate. Kind of cool stuff, kind of cool stories. But you know what? If you guys are going to do stuff, you're going to do it right. Have a backup. Don't assume that every place you're going to go is going to have a fire pit or some wood that you can burn. And if you have some propane and you have some gas and you have a stove that can utilize it, unfortunately, the stoves are not universal in that regard. But you can make them kind of universal if you get the adapter kits. That's good stuff. I would definitely make do with, something along those lines. I would have one of these things sitting idle. Propane never goes bad. Good stuff. All right, so folks, here in today's podcast channel, I'm not going to make this video too terribly long, but I give you guys kind of a heads up on like other cool stuff. And Coleman stoves rock. Always check out Craigslist for those guys getting rid of their old camping gear. Always check out those guys that are selling their stuff on eBay. And of course, cruising net. You'll always find a better deal, or lay it away, because right now they have layaway in Walmart. Good times. All right, so here it is, podcast channel. You know what? Eat good. With a stove, you can't really do anything but that. Keep it a tight ring, and as always,